The year was 1960, April. The place was Nashville, RCA's Studio B. It wasn't a glamorous spot. It was a workspace, functional, a bit worn around the edges. It smelled like old coffee, stale cigarette smoke, and the faint electric hum of vacuum tubes warming up in the amplifiers. This was where the magic happened, but it looked like a warehouse. Concrete floors, acoustic panels on the walls that looked like giant beige egg cartons. It was a room built for sound, not for show. The guys trickling in were the best. They were the Nashville A-Team. Not a formal name, just what everyone knew. If you needed a hit record cut in this town, you called these guys. Floyd Kramer on piano, Hank Garland on guitar, Bob Moore on bass, Buddy Harmon on drums, Boots Randolph on sax. Chet Atkins was often around, producing, sometimes playing. These weren't kids. They were seasoned professionals. They came to work, punched the clock, and made perfect records. They could read any chart you put in front of them. They could invent a part on the spot. They were musical craftsmen, efficient, precise. They treated a recording session like a construction job. You get the blueprint, you do your part, you build the thing, you go home. There was a tension in the air that day, a different kind of energy. It wasn't just another session for another singer. He was coming, the big one. He'd been away for 2 years, in the army, in Germany. 2 years is a lifetime in pop music. Tastes change, fads come and go. The kids who screamed for him were now a little older. They had jobs, maybe families. The rock and roll explosion he started had splintered into a dozen other sounds. Softer stuff, teen idols with perfect hair and no hips. The question hung in the air unspoken. Is he still relevant? Is he still the king? Or was he a memory from high school? Everyone was on edge. The record executives were nervous. The engineers were double-checking every cable, every microphone. The musicians were trying to act cool, but they felt it too. This was more than a job. It was history. This was his comeback session. The album would be called Elvis is Back. He finally arrived. The door opened and he walked in. He wasn't the wild kid from the 50s anymore. The army had changed him. He was leaner. His face was a little harder. He seemed more serious, more focused. He moved with a quiet confidence, not the explosive energy of his youth. He wore a simple shirt, dark pants. He looked like a man, not a boy. The room got quiet. Not out of fear, but out of respect. He was one of them, a musician, but he was also something else entirely. He was the reason they were all here. He greeted everyone, shook hands, called them by name. He was polite, professional. He knew these guys were the best. He respected their talent, and they respected his. They'd seen him work before. They knew beneath the public image there was a serious artist who cared deeply about the music. He understood it. He felt it in his bones. They ran through a few songs, fast rockers and bluesy numbers. The stuff he was known for. It was good. It was tight. The band was cooking. They were locking into a groove. The classic sound was there. It felt comfortable. It felt familiar. The engineers in the control booth nodded. This was working. This was the stuff. But Elvis seemed distracted. He was searching for something else. He was polite about it, but you could tell his mind was elsewhere. Then he pulled out the sheet music for the next song. The musicians looked at it. It was different. This wasn't a 12-bar blues. It wasn't a rockabilly stomp. The melody was grand. It was sweeping. It had an almost classical feel. It was based on an old song, an Italian standard that every opera singer in the world had sung. He'd heard a popular English version of it while he was in Germany and became obsessed. He played it over and over. He knew he could do it better. He knew he could make it his own. He wanted to sing it with real power, real passion. He wanted to show everyone the voice he now had. It had deepened. It was richer, more controlled. He could do more with it now. This song was his chance to prove it. The song was a ballad. A huge, romantic, open-hearted ballad. It needed a specific feeling. It was a declaration of love. Urgent. Desperate. It was a song you sing on a balcony in Naples under a full moon. It needed drama. It needed atmosphere. They tried a few takes. It was technically perfect. Floyd Kramer's piano was beautiful. Hank Garland's guitar fills were tasteful. The rhythm section was solid as a rock. And Elvis sang his heart out. His voice soared. He hit the big notes at the end with incredible power. It was impressive. Anyone else would have been thrilled, but it wasn't right. Something was missing. He stopped the band. He walked into the middle of the room. He looked around at the musicians. They looked back, waiting. Ready for a key change, a different tempo, a new instruction. Pros. They were pros. They could handle anything. He was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be thinking, trying to find the right words. He wasn't an articulate man when it came to musical theory. He didn't talk about chord progressions or time signatures. He talked about feelings. He talked about moods. It's not there, he said, his voice soft. It sounds good. You're all playing it great, but it's not right. The musicians waited. This was the delicate part of any session. The artist trying to explain a feeling to the technicians. This song, he continued. It's not supposed to be in a studio in Nashville. It's supposed to be somewhere else. It's late at night. It's dark. It's romantic, you know? They nodded. They kind of knew. But how do you play late at night? How do you make a guitar sound romantic? He could see he wasn't getting through. He needed to do something more. He needed to change the environment. He needed to force the mood on them. He couldn't take them to Italy, so he had to bring a piece of Italy to Studio B. He looked around the room. The bright, fluorescent overhead lights hummed. The little lights on the music stands cast a clinical glow on the sheet music. It was a laboratory. It was sterile. It was the opposite of the feeling he wanted. He wanted magic. He was getting efficiency, and then he made the request. It was so simple, so strange, so completely out of the ordinary for a professional recording session. He looked over at the engineer in the control booth. "Hey," he said, "can you do me a favor?" "Sure, Elvis. What do you need?" "Turn off the lights." There was a silence. A deep, confused silence. The musicians looked at each other. Did he just say turn off the lights? All of them. The engineer's voice crackled over the studio speaker. "You mean turn them all off?" "Yeah," Elvis said. "All of them. Kill every light in this room. I want it pitch black." Now, the confusion turned to disbelief. These were the A-team. They worked with charts. They needed to see their instruments. They needed to see their music stands. They needed to see each other for cues. You don't record music in the dark. It's unprofessional. It's impossible. It's just weird. Someone might have chuckled nervously. Someone else might have shaken their head. Floyd Kramer, sitting at his grand piano, probably thought the kid had finally lost his mind. How was he supposed to find the right keys in complete darkness? Hank Garland needed to see the fretboard for his intricate guitar lines. This wasn't a simple 3-chord song you could play with your eyes closed. This was a complex arrangement. "Elvis," one of the producers said, his voice cautious. "The guys need to see the music." "No, they don't," Elvis said, his voice firm but calm. "They know the song by now. I don't want them to read the music. I want them to feel it. I want them to listen. To me. To each other. Just try it. For me." There was no arguing with him when he got like this, when he had a vision. They knew that. It was his session, his record, his money. If he wanted to play in the dark, they would play in the dark. It was a bizarre request. It went against every rule of professional musicianship. But he wasn't just any artist. He was Elvis. So, with a sigh and a shrug, the engineer reached for the switch. One by one, the banks of lights went out. The bright, humming studio was plunged into an unnerving blackness. It was a thick, heavy dark. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only light was the faint, ghostly green and red glow from the power indicators on the amps in the control room window. The musicians were just silhouettes, shapes in the gloom. You could hear a chair squeak. Someone cleared their throat. It was disorienting. Their primary sense for this kind of work site was gone. They were left with just their ears and their hands. The darkness changed everything. The room felt smaller, more intimate. Every little sound was amplified. The gentle hum of the equipment seemed louder. The air felt thicker. They were no longer a group of individuals at their separate stations. They were just a collection of souls in the void, connected only by the sound they were about to make. And then, out of the black, came Elvis's voice, not singing, just speaking, softly. "Okay, let's try it again." From the top, someone in the control booth hit the record button. The red light came on, a single demonic eye in the darkness. Buddy Harmon tapped his sticks together. 4 soft clicks, the only cue they had. And then the music started. It was different this time. It wasn't perfect anymore. It was better. Without the charts to lean on, the musicians were forced to listen. Really listen to each other, to the space between the notes. Floyd Kramer wasn't just playing the chords on the page, he was responding to the emotion in Elvis's voice. His piano part became softer, more expressive. It swelled and receded with the vocal. And Hank Garland wasn't looking at his fretboard. He was feeling his way through it. His fingers moved by instinct, by memory. The little melodic runs he played weren't planned. They were spontaneous reactions. They were whispers in the dark. The rhythm section, the foundation of it all, became a single heartbeat. The bass and drums locked in a way that was less about tempo and more about pulse. It was a living, breathing thing, and Elvis, his voice in the darkness was immense. There were no distractions, no faces to look at, no clock on the wall. There was only the song, the emotion, and the voice. He wasn't performing for a microphone. He was confessing to the night. He poured every ounce of romance, of longing, of desperation into his delivery. The Italian melody, filtered through his Tennessee soul, became something new. Something powerful and profound. The musicians weren't just playing their parts anymore. They were painting a picture with sound. They were building the moonlit balcony in Naples right there in Studio B. They were creating the mood Elvis had been searching for. The darkness had stripped away the technical, the clinical, the professional. It left only the art. The feeling. They got to the end of the song, the big crescendo. Elvis's voice soared, holding that final, powerful note for what seemed like an eternity. It hung in the blackness, vibrating in the air, then it faded away. The last chord from the piano echoed and died. And then silence. A total, complete silence in the pitch-dark room. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. They all just floated in the aftermath of what they had created. They knew. Everyone in that room knew. They had just captured lightning in a bottle. After a long moment, the engineer's voice came over the speaker, hushed and full of awe. "Wow, Elvis, I think we got it." A switch was flipped. The lights came back on, blindingly bright. Everyone blinked, adjusting. The spell was broken. It was just a studio again. Just a bunch of guys in a room with instruments. But something had changed. They looked at each other, a shared, unspoken understanding passing between them. They had gone somewhere else together. Elvis was smiling. A real, genuine smile. "Yeah," he said. "That's the one." They didn't need another take. They had found it. In the dark, the bizarre request had worked. He had forced them to abandon their training and rely on their instincts. He had made them stop playing music and start feeling it. The song became one of the biggest hits of his entire career. It sold millions of copies all over the world. It defined his comeback. It proved to everyone that he was not just a rock and roll kid. He was a true vocalist, one of the greatest of his generation. It was a testament to his artistic vision. He knew what he wanted, and he knew sometimes you had to do something strange to get it. He knew that to create a song about a romantic night, you had to first turn out the lights. And that's how they recorded It's Now or Never.